We'll get back to your video shortly, but first, many of you right now will be watching the show on your phone, tablet or laptop, completely unaware that this very second someone could be accessing your device and stealing your data. Using the internet without private internet access, VPN, is like letting Facebook post your diary. Your friends and family can read all your dirty secrets. A virtual private network, or VPN for short, is an app that hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection through an encrypted tunnel. It shields your digital life from those eyes who are looking to exploit your private information. Whenever you connect to the internet on a public Wi-Fi network at airports, coffee shops, friends' houses, or even at your own home, your data is at risk of being stolen. Your device is transmitting a great amount of information out into the open, which can be viewed by various different entities before reaching the intended website, such as your ISP, government censors, advertising companies, and more. Hackers on the same network can easily steal your personal data. With PIA, you're protected. But there's more. With PIA, you can access all your usual streaming services, including Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney+, even if you're outside your own region. All you need to do is open the app, select a server from 91 countries, and just like that, you're digitally there. And it's not just for fun. With recent legislation, more and more content is being restricted. PIA allows you to access the content and news that you want to watch. And with one PIA subscription, you can protect an unlimited number of devices, so that's the whole family covered. Follow the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen now to receive a massive 86% discount, making it just £1.57 per month. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and to top it off, you'll receive 4 additional months for free. Head to piavpn.com now and take control of your digital life.
Hi, I'm Fergus Macphee and welcome to the Tech Report on Times Radio. Joining me today, I'm delighted to say, is Chris Stokel Walker, tech journalist. Chris, thank you so much for joining us again on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we're going to start today by talking about Grok once again, because with a story that I think was first reported by Forbes, over 370,000 user conversations with the artificial intelligence chatbot Grok have been exposed in search engine results, seemingly without users' knowledge. Now, it seems that the way this happened is there was a feature that unique links were created when users pressed a button to share the transcripts, but instead of just sharing it with the sort of intended recipient, it appears to have made it searchable online. How does something like this happen?
Through a large part of user error, I think is the main way that this happens, Fergus. But then also there are issues, I think, with the way that these things are designed in terms of the user interface and our understanding of that. Unfortunately, these people in these big AI companies, these big tech companies, whether they are X, whether they are OpenAI, to which a similar thing happened as I first reported for Fast Company around about a week and a half ago, or whether you're working for any of the others, there is this idea of every user is as intelligent and understanding of how this tech works as you are. And the reality is that that is not the case. When we are talking about this kind of general purpose technology, like generative AI, you have vast numbers of people who are using it. And actually, it does mean that sometimes you have people who are maybe a little bit less tech literate than you are doing this. So the kind of inference here is that many people thought that they were sharing a conversation perhaps with a friend or a family member, one or two people, not realizing that actually this propelled their searches, their chatbots interactions into search engines that can be seen by lots of people. And this was certainly the issue that I found when I uncovered this about OpenAI's ChatGPT a little while back, where OpenAI initially tried to dismiss this and said, actually, it's very clear how this works, and it's very clear that anybody would know they are being put into a search result, when actually they decided that wasn't the case. That lasted a few hours before actually the kind of chief information security officer at OpenAI decided to turn on that and say that's not the case. We think that actually people were misunderstanding it, but obviously there are huge consequences as well.
So if it is a case of user error, like you say, there's hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people using these tools, is it a case of just the best thing to do is to get rid of features like this, like I think OpenAI have done?
Yeah, I think in this instance, probably it is because there is too much confusion going on, and the use case that you would have for actually indexing these things in a search engine hasn't ever really been made clear to me. I never got it with what OpenAI was trying to achieve by having these things indexed on a search engine. The only thing that I could think of, and it was a handful of use cases of people who talked to me through social media after I'd reported this story originally, they basically said, well, I had come up with this amazing insight by chatting to, in that case, ChatGPT, but it could also be with Grok. And I felt like it was important to add to the world's knowledge to share that with everybody else. Now, for 99.99% of people, that is unlikely to be the case. You are talking about the banal, the mundane, or sometimes the intensely personal. And those are things that you don't want to end up accessible to all and sundry. So, yeah, it seems like it's easier for me to kind of just remove that. I think the reason why this functionality is there in the first place is the developers behind it thought, well, actually, this is something we can do, so why not? And maybe you need a little bit more deliberate thinking in terms of the user and putting the user first here for once.
I guess AI chatbots are still in their relative infancy. Should people be concerned about, have these sort of privacy concerns going forward?
Yeah, I mean, the unfortunate thing is that now that this is out there, it is incredibly difficult to wind back. So, 370,000 chats with Grok. We saw actually there were more than 100,000 with ChatGPT. ChatGPT ended up, tamping down on that feature, removing the option to do that, which stops it going forwards. But the challenge is, how do you actually undo that and remove it from Google? Google has a stake in this, and they have been working with OpenAI to try and remove the ChatGPT chats, and I imagine probably will do the same with X to remove the Grok ones. But the problem is that Google isn't the sole storer of information on the web. Once something is out there, it is incredibly difficult to wind back and put away and delete permanently. And so we've seen some of those initial OpenAI interactions that I reported on a little while back, turning up in things like the Internet Archive. And the reality here is the web never forgets. And so if it is out there now, it's probably out there for good.
So are there any ways that users, people watching this video, can mitigate to avoid privacy concerns? Or is it just a case of be better at using the technology?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things. One is that you just make sure that you are double certain of whatever it is that you're clicking on when it comes to share functionalities. It is important and useful that these AI tools have those share functionalities. I use the share functionalities as well, but I'm now much more wary of what it is that I'm actually sharing and the terms under which I am sharing it. The other thing, I suppose, in terms of data privacy is that a lot of these tools rely on our interactions to improve their services. So everything that you are saying, often by default, is then being kind of analyzed and reused to try and understand how future responses can be improved. Now, you can opt out of that if this is something that really concerns you. You just go into the settings section of these various platforms. I will say, generally, OpenAI is pretty good at respecting that. X and the Grok is sometimes a little bit iffy on this. There have been past instances of Elon Musk turning back on features that users have turned off, either through a sort of accidental update or maybe something else. So always just keep an eye on that. Maybe every couple of weeks or every month, go back into those settings, check on the privacy settings, and make sure that you're not sharing stuff that you didn't intend to.
Just one thing on what you just said. There does seem to, at least in the sort of last few weeks, quite a lot of controversy does seem to follow XAI and Grok. I mean, is there any sort of specific reason for that in a way that it maybe doesn't follow OpenAI as much?
I think in part because of the way that Grok and XAI more generally is coded and is leaning politically and socially. It is an extension of Elon Musk's worldview. We know that he bought Twitter, now renamed X, back several years ago in order to try and improve the space and the area in which people can speak freely, and for some people that is offensively, to one another, and has basically decided that he wants to develop a chatbot that can act as a tonic and a riposte to some of what he sees as social media and also AI's liberal biases. So I think the reason why this is happening is that controversy does follow Elon Musk around, and he doesn't necessarily shy away from that. Whether it is the themed chatbots that he has rolled out, where you can speak to, for instance, sexually permissive individuals, whether you can pretend to be kind of a really bad actor, both of those, I think, position Grok and position XAI as much more to the right of centre and much more willing to court controversy than some of the other, maybe slightly more sanitized companies are.
Yeah, is it too simplistic to say that AI tools are only as good as the people who run them?
Not at all. One of the big maxims that is worth bearing in mind with all of these generative AI tools is garbage in, garbage out. It really does depend not only on the training data that you use, because that is ultimately what makes up its quote unquote knowledge. And it's worth saying all the time that those go heavily in inverted commas, because AI doesn't know anything. It is not intelligent in any way, shape, or form. It is simply regurgitating and rematching what it has already seen. But also, we often overlook, and I think that this is one of the challenges with AI and tech more generally, that the creators do put their own biases in it willingly, in the case of Elon Musk, or unwillingly or unwittingly, even as well. There is a lot of things that happen in the design and iteration of any technology that requires either deliberate or accidental decisions. You make a design choice of where you put a button, you choose the kind of weights of your algorithm, you decide what worldview your AI chatbot will have. All of those can skew the output and skew what the user sees. And we tend to have this very deterministic view of technology as being computers. Therefore, they are infallible, they are impartial, they are perfect. And the reality is, they're none of those. They are all very complicated beings, just like us as well.
We'll hold that thought because I want to get into some of the content of the leaked messages. Obviously, we said there were over 370,000, so there was some interesting stuff in some of them. One of the leaked chats provided a plan on how best to assassinate Elon Musk. Another gave instructions on how to make a C4-style explosive, and more explained how to produce Class A drugs. No, you get the picture. They're obviously all quite shocking things, but should we be surprised when we sort of know how AI works?
When we know how Grok works, probably not. I mean, one of the things that is notable is that all of these would not necessarily be created using many, if any, other AI chatbots that are in the mainstream. And that is in part because companies like OpenAI, like Anthropic, the makers of Claude, Google, who produce Gemini, they all throw up so-called guardrails. So basically, when you get a little bit out of the center ground, when you get into anything a little bit dangerous, whether it is talking about manufacturing drugs, whether it is talking about assassinations, whether it is talking about anything else, kind of safety checks kick in and the system shuts down in effect and kind of says, well, actually, I'm not going to give you a response to that because it goes against my terms of service.
So AI does have the power to say no.
It does, but it has that power because it is said by the creators of it. They put in those rules, and those rules are followed by AI. They can be shunted off those guardrails in a relatively simplistic way, which is one of the cat and mouse problems that we have with generative AI tools. Is every good actor will always be outmatched by a bad actor who is trying to exploit the same things that we are taking the benefits from. But with Grok, I think what they've done is they've deliberately made those guardrails much weaker, which allows you to engage the chatbot in these sorts of conversations that perhaps are a little bit unsavory, perhaps very much unsafe. And that's a design decision by Elon Musk, who potentially has to live with the consequences of it.
I feel like I'm circling back again, yeah. But is there a benefit of that? Or like you say, it's literally just what Elon Musk wants?
There are strong arguments to say that actually sometimes these AI chatbots are far too censorious in what they do. And this is setting aside kind of the political realm of free speech or anything to do with culture wars. For instance, I use AI sometimes to do a quick scan of who I might want to talk to for stories. And I used to be able to do that with a previous version of ChatGPT o3 in a way that was very, very good. It would find me experts, it would find me their emails that are publicly accessible on websites, and it would say, maybe these people might be useful for you. When ChatGPT updated to GPT-5, which was its latest, most up-to-date version, Suddenly, that didn't work because the guardrails had kicked in. They had recognized that there was a potential issue here, perhaps with people who aren't journalists finding contact details of people who might not want to be contacted. And they had said, well, we can't give out emails, even if they are publicly accessible on, for instance, university websites, personal websites, or whatever. So that was an instance of a guardrail kicking in that wasn't necessary. And the reality is, you said it yourself, Fergus, we are in such an early stage of generative AI, less than 3 years into the post-chat GPT revolution that we're all living through. And we're still trying to figure out where we feel comfortable morally on this kind of thing.
I just want to end then on, we've talked about the online safety bill a lot on this channel and on this show, mostly around pornography and the use of VPNs. But where do AI chatbots fall into all of this? I was just thinking, if I was a parent and I found out that Grok was teaching my child how to make a C4 bomb, I might not be too happy.
Yeah, and this is one of the challenges that we have, which is technology moves very quickly and regulation moves incredibly slowly. I mean, the Online Safety Act, as you say, we've talked about this ad infinitum, it seems, across Times Radio and all of Times Radio's YouTube channels. Certainly I've contributed to a good number of those conversations, and I think it's a relatively settled agreement that actually, the Online Safety Act is far from perfect, and where you fit on that kind of scale of far from perfect to really awful depends probably on your point of view, your age, and your political persuasion. But the reality is that it is difficult for regulators to keep track of these things because the Online Safety Act was conceived not quite in a pre-Chat GPT world, but large parts of the conversation, the drafting of the regulation did happen prior to the release of Chat GPT. It was obviously past post-Chat GPT, but the reality is that it's incredibly difficult to try and add these things on. I imagine, because we've seen the conversations around this, Dame Rachel D'Souza was on Times Radio just this week saying that she felt like the Online Safety Act is a starting point and we can bolt on additions to it, that we will see some sort of AI elements in this. But the idea is that if you can encounter adult content under the Online Safety Act, then generally you should be regulated under its terms. The practicalities of that, of course, as Ofcom tries to struggle with regulating the entire web full stop, means that might not be quite on their priority list yet.
Well, you said we've covered it a lot on Times Radio and this show already. I'm sure we will do again. But for now, Chris Stokel Walker, thank you for joining us on the Tech Report.
Thank you.